Hello, hello, hello. It's me. It's you. It's us. We're here. Another fun Sunday morning. Welcome. I am Patrick Stewart, and you are listening to Taoist Corner Podcast, brought to you by Taoist Online. All right, for those of you who are new, the Taoist Online is an online magazine where we publish religious, philosophical, and spiritual articles from over 900 writers around the world on medium.com. Medium.com is an amazing blogging platform. You can even make a little change on the side if you're so inclined. That's where we publish. Also, publish a curated online magazine called Project Jade. You can read at projectjade.net. That is a fully professional online magazine where each writer is paid about tip, nice tip, an ever increasing tip. If you like what you read there and you want to help contribute, please consider making a donation. You can do that at projectjade.net. All the money goes right back to the writers so I can give more amazing articles. Okay? And produce this podcast. So, what is this podcast? Well, about 2,500 years ago, a man by the name of Lao Tzu was legendarily a librarian in the emperor's court in China, ancient China, and decided he was done with life and warring states and all the nonsense. So decided to retire. But as he left for the countryside, a border guard asked him to stop, spend the night, and write down his words of wisdom. And so he wrote this. This little book is the Tao Te Ching, written by Mr. Lao Tzu. 81 chapters about living your life in harmony with nature, those around you, and talks about the Tao. What is the Tao? Tao is, well, first of all, you learn that the Tao cannot be named, nor can it be explained, but it really is. All we can do, express the manifestation. We can talk about how it changes things, its effects on people and places and things. It's like dark matter. For those who are more scientifically inclined, we can't really explain what it is. We know it's there because we can see its manifestation. And so, 2,500 years later, here we are. People who follow Tao or who learn about Tao are called Taoists, which is where the name Taoist Corner Podcast comes from. What we do here is every week we work through this book, 365 Tao by Deng Ming-Dao, very great, wise gentleman who's still alive. This isn't some crazy ancient book here. This book discusses how to take those Taoist lessons and apply them to a modern lifestyle, because you may be surprised to find out that ancient China and the modern world may be not the same, maybe a little different, but all the same, we are unique in some regards, but not unique in other regards. So each week I'll go through about 4 or 5 chapters of this book, and I'll read it. Very short, only about 1 page per chapter, and then we'll discuss the lesson. It's a daily meditation guide. We're actually supposed to be doing 1 chapter per day, but since I am a father of 3, a full-time job, I can't stream every day. So we're going to do it all in one go each week. This is episode 20, February 4th, 2024. Happy February, you guys. We've made it month number 2. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're enjoying your weekend or wherever you are. Maybe you have the day off, maybe you don't. So if you're listening to this later on in the week, I do live stream this every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time on our YouTube channel. You can check this out. Or listen to us any other time on your favorite podcast network of choice, Spotify, Apple, all the above. Yeah. So I hope you tune in. We'll be here for about an hour. So enjoy. Um, we are on chapter 108 out of 365. As I said, it's supposed to be a daily meditation guide, one chapter for every day of the year. So if you want to follow along, I highly recommend purchasing 365 Tao by Deng Ming-Dao. And yeah, that way each week read along, or you can study every day and then listen to this podcast and hopefully uh, either figure out that, man, you and I think alike, or find out we don't think alike. Maybe you read it and you find something completely different than what I did, and we both learned something. And that's okay. The great thing about being a Taoist is it's all open to interpretation, unlike other religions where interpretation is bad. We're all supposed to be the same. I would say that being a philosophical Taoist encourages you to think very differently. And even though you may read the exact same words that I read, and we come up with two very different conclusions, I would say that's the most Taoist thing we could do. And my cat is going to try and interrupt us all podcast long. So if you hear meowing, that's what's going on. Hooray for live broadcast. Okay. Let's get going. Chapter 108. It's called Numbers. For those of you who are new or who can't see, if you're listening to the audio, it starts with a little poem, about 4 or 5 lines, and then goes into the actual chapter. That's what you'll hear. Here we go. 108. Numbers. 1 gives birth to 2 gives birth to 3. 3 gives birth to 10,000 things. 108 count make one cycle. Constant turning creates all things. Today is the 108th day. Why are numbers so important to those who follow Tao? Even today, when numbers are more commonly yoked to the service of finance and engineering, there are those who revere numbers with the cheap version of mysticism, superstition. Numbers form a closed world with mysteries to explore and exploit if our understanding is deep enough. Followers of Tao emphasize certain numbers. 1 is the unity of Tao. 2 is duality. 3 is the unevenness that will generate movement. 4 is the seasons. 5 elements generate the world. 6 parts of the body are the arms, legs, hand, head, and trunk. 7 is the day of the waxing moon by the lunar calendar. 8 is the number of divination. 9 is the number of life. 10 is heaven's cycle. There are 24 periods in a year, each with its own characteristic. 36, 6 squared. 108 is 30 cycles of 36 and represents a greater cycle, although there are even more esoteric connotations attached to it. Numbers are only symbols, a way for human beings to project upon order upon the universe. They are a language more precise than words. But does Tao talk? Numbers are important to master, but take care to look beyond language and numbers the true reality that they foreshadow. So the poem that came before this chapter is actually a verse from the Project Jade. And the way I was taught is describing, you can see it here on camera, the yin yang. Okay. So I'll hold this up. 1, the Tao, gives birth to yin and yang, or Texas. Okay. 2, yin and yang, give birth to 3, is the movement. Okay. So a yin yang is constantly rotating. You know, most of the time in static pictures, we just see it there. We see it on a necklace and it doesn't move. But in reality, it's supposed to be rotating, it's supposed to be moving constantly. Then the poem goes on. Three gives birth to 10,000 things. So in ancient China, 10,000 things was another way of just saying everything, right? It would be like, for those Americans on the stream, it's like, say, a bajillion, jillion things. They're like, oh my gosh, there was a million people there. We don't mean exactly a million, we just mean a lot, right? So that phrase 10,000 shows up a lot in Taoist text. And that's what they're talking about. Okay, so yeah, so that's what that poem means. In the chapter, I know, and numbers are very religious in a lot of religion. I know in Christianity, 12 is a big deal. 12 apostles. Of course, 7 was a big deal. 7 days of the week, because God created the story of creation took 7 days. God rested on the seventh day. That became the holy day, the Sabbath. Um, so I think in this chapter, it's important to remember that humans have this ability to need, divide, and categorize things all the time, right? Um, like we have to describe ourselves by our skin color and what country we come from, what country our ancestors came from, and I mean, just it goes on, right? Like who we can fall in love with, and what food we, and it's crazy, right? Like you can describe yourself a million different ways with numbers or words or language, and that's fine, right? Like it's not inherently bad, and even that word bad is problematic, but we won't go into that right now. It is important, however, to remember people are not words. Living things cannot be wholly defined by the words we choose to describe them. And let me give you an example. This here is a phone, right? A smartphone, cell phone, whatever you want to call it, right? But in other countries, it might be called something else. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's called something else in other languages. So if I go there and I say phone, they're gonna be like, meh. I mean, they may recognize it because of what it looks like, but they won't understand my words because there's nothing intrinsic about this brick of glass and electronics that makes it the word phone. If I walk up to a tree, there's nothing about that thing that causes it to be called tree. Someone just made that up one day, and all the English speakers agreed to it, right? And so it's a tree. But that's what this chapter is getting at. Language and descriptions and knowledge in general, while great and has helped the human race survive, can be misleading, right? Because when we define what something is, we define what something is not. And that's where the problem can lie, right? That's where the trick is. It's important to remember that your neighbors or your peers or even yourself, we are not the words we choose to use to describe us. We are more than that. We are a living, breathing miracle of nature, as my teacher once said. We are the universe manifested and speaking back to itself. I think how crazy that one is. If you think about the Big Bang, if it starts there, the universe exploded into existence, and about 14 billion years later, the same stuff that came out of that explosion congealed together and made you. And now we can sit here and talk and think and describe our own existence back the thing that created our existence to begin with. It'll blow your mind if you sit there and think about it too long. But that's what this chapter is getting at. I like it. I love talking about how nature created us. We are nature. Nature is us. It's not just all spiritual talk, right? It is reality. People talk about how they feel so alone and they feel so disconnected from nature all the time, and they sit in these boxes of wood and metal and steel in front of these screens, and they just feel so alone. But Alan Watts, a great philosopher entertainer, once said that how can we be alone if everything around us was created all the same? I mean, we are the same stuff. We're literally made out of the same stuff. We came from the same place. And a billion years from now, when the world is gone, the atoms that make up our body will make up something else. And so, are we that dust cloud? Kinda. Eventually. But doesn't that mean we're also the dust cloud that came before the world? I would say so. I think that's cool. I think that's awesome. There it is. Moving on. Chapter 109, Fundamental. After completion, come new beginning. Gain strength, renew the root. In music, the fundamental tone is the lowest or root tone of the chord. Without its presence, no true character is established. Our actions in life are as similarly varied and complex as music. Without a thorough grounding, there is no harmony. Followers of Tao emphasize cycles. This must include a sound understanding of what to do whenever a cycle comes to an end. New ones will begin. Some of them will be some of them will be engendered by the old one. Others may be in the background and will now come forward. If we are to prepare shape properly, oh man, I'm going to have to cut this in editing. New ones will begin. Some of them will be engendered by the old one. Others may simply be in the background and will now come forward. If we are to properly shape these new movements, and if we are to prevent unwanted cycles from beginning, we must take stock and renew our basis in the fundamentals. Everyone wants to be darling, creative, and original. Everyone wants to do things in new ways. But unless we return over and over again to the basic, we will have no chance to truly soar. Do not forget the root. Without it, we can never issue forth true power. Okay, let's discuss music and wave and harmony. For those who may not know, I went to the University of North Texas for college, for university, and studied music. One of my music classes, we learned about waves and the property of waves and how they can interact. They can emphasize each other. They can strengthen each other. Or if there is disharmony, then if they if they bounce off each other, it actually makes the sound quieter, right? It weakens the wave. So it's interesting that in Taoism and Taoist texts, a lot of the times you will see this concept of waves appear. A lot of times you'll see it in water, but in here it works just the same. When you have, so what is a wave? Okay, a wave is a vibration that pushes molecules forward in a pattern. right? You have the frequency of a wave. And what is a frequency? Well, it's the number of times that the peak appears in that wave. So a wave essentially is that vibration line, right? Going up and down. And the measurement of distance from that peak to this peak, how fast that appears per second, that's your frequency, right? Okay. In music, what we learn is that a singular tone is not actually one tone. A pitch or a tone is made up of different frequencies all together. And you can hear this really well in an old church bell. You ever heard old church bells ring and something sounds kind of off about it? Like it might be playing a happy song that sounds kind of dark and mysterious. That's because of the overtone sequence, right? Because the kind of hidden intertones that are inside those real tones actually are able to come out and be heard due to the shape of the bell. Now, there are bells that are shaped to where it kind of hides these, or you hear different overtones come out, but that's what's going on. I find it really interesting. Okay, so now that we understand waves, and now that we understand that, let's go back to this chapter. Okay, it talks about this hidden tone, this hidden true undertone in one, right? It says like, where is it? Without a thorough grounding, there is no harmony. Our actions in life are as similarly varied and complex as music. Okay, so think of your life as a series of notes, right? Or a grand melody or symphony of life. Sometimes that produces a happy tone. Sometimes it can produce a sad tone or an angry tone or a scary tone, right? Maybe the music gets slower, maybe the music gets faster, and that's your life. And understanding that the foundation of these tones is the Tao is important. What is the foundation? Foundation is the very bottom, the structural integrity that holds up whatever it is, right? Maybe it's a house, right? Maybe it's a building. And if you lose that foundation, or if you don't understand how that foundation works, then the house will collapse, the building will collapse. In music, that root tone is the main foundation of the music you're listening to. Key. It's the If you're in the key of C for all you music majors, if you're in the key of C, the tonal note is C. You have to come back and return to the C to make the melody or the chord progression sound complete. So too is our life. We must return to the Tao at the end. Start the Tao, have a chord progression. At the end of that progression, come back to the Tao, right? So remember what we were talking about earlier in the yin yang, okay, and this symbol right here on my shirt? Okay, spins, right? Yin overtakes yang, yang overtakes yin, so forth, so on. You have a little bit of yin inside the yang, a little bit of yang inside the yin. Okay, are you guys all tracking with me here? I know this is a lot for this one chapter. In our lives, if we do not continue to return, you will live in disharmony. Does that make sense? If you do not understand the foundation of which you are building upon, what you are building will topple. And if it doesn't topple, man, you're going to get some leaky roofs and some cracked walls, and you're going to have to fix those squeak, like those doors that squeak all the time. And it's a lot of upkeep, right? But if you have a strong foundation, it won't be so bad. All things return. I was told once that the most Taoist thing you could do is read everything about Taoism and then forget it all and then come back and learn it all over again. That makes sense now, right? Because the yin yang spins, because everything is in cycle. Everything comes back. We start out as stardust. We form into a planet, which forms into humans, which forms into you. And then you become planet, and the planet again becomes dust, star, space. That's the way it is. That will form a new star, will form new planets, and the cycle begins all over again. It's a long cycle. I'm not saying we're all going to be around for it. It's true. It's how it works. It's how life works. And I love that this simple chapter really helps explain all of this deep understanding. Sometimes I stay awake at night thinking about this stuff, right? It's crazy. If you let your mind really run with this, you can really keep yourself up. Okay, here we go. Moving on. Chapter 110, Invocation. Invocation becomes declaration. Worship becomes recognition. When blessings mature, one glimpses the source. When one is young in Tao, all practices begin as external procedure. Sometimes it is difficult to understand their significance. We don't know what to expect. This is proper. Not daring to interfere with growth and discovery. Those who follow Tao hesitate to go beyond technical instruction. Take worship, for example. At first, an invocation is something external. Repeat it, but really it means very little. You kneel down at the altar because you need something on which to focus. Once you realize that the true Tao is to be found within yourself, you shift your attention. Then worship becomes recognition. Your own spirit arises, and you learn to tap into it on your own. If someone had told you what to look for, you might never be sure of your experiences. What comes from outer suggestion is not true Tao. Glimpsing the source leaves no doubt. So worship, what is it? What's going on? You ever been to church or worship service and you recite all these prayers and you kneel, and Catholic Mass is a perfect example of this. You're up and you're down and you sit and you kneel and you repeat things. It's very busy. It's a very busy kind of service. And those procedures, those things you do, those repetitions you have, it's not enough to do them, right? What you're practicing there is internalizing what's happening. And it's really that work internally that leads you to the truth. Think of it like the Matrix, okay? No one can tell you what the Matrix is. You have to experience it yourself. For all you sci-fi fans out there, no doubt. But the Tao is the same way. I can't describe to you what Tao is, because as we learned a few chapters ago at the beginning of this episode, words fail to describe really anything. There is no natural value to any object that makes it the word we describe it as. And that's what your spiritual journey is going to be. That's what your progress should feel like. When you spend time meditating or praying or just sitting still and listening, or maybe you just do something fun, right? Something that helps you focus. Maybe you read a great book and everything fades away around you and you are completely enthralled inside this story. That is meditation, okay? That ability to shut everything else down and only be whatever it is you're doing, that is meditation. And when you're able to do that meditation, and when you do it enough, that state of being that you find yourself in, you can actually put yourself into that state at your command. You can just do it. And it's hard to put that state of mind into words because you're not doing anything difficult. You're simply being a more natural version of you. And that's what this is all about. That's what Taoism is all about. It's about finding a more natural version of who you are and living that way. Whatever that way is for you, that is you. And we all have doubt. We all have sadness. We all have human emotions. And that is also a part of us. So when you find this state of being through your meditation practice, don't think that all of a sudden your emotions go away. You don't reach this point and all of a sudden feel happy all the time, 100% happy. You're just never sad. That's not reality. That's not how your human mind works. That's not how my human mind works. We have developed these emotions to help protect us and to help us make sense of the world around us and live our lives. So, this state that you can put yourself in is not void of emotion. It is, in fact, I would say more emotional than we live most of our life, right? But back to the chapter, it's that internalization that is the true worship, right? Finding yourself inside, that is the true spiritual path. That is the true spiritual being inside of yourself. Um, and it's important to remember that when you recognize where you're trying to go, when you recognize that you are perfect just the way you are, right? That's powerful, right? Not desiring to be somebody else, not desiring to go somewhere else or to be with somebody else, right? Or or have something you don't have. That contentment to enjoy your life, that's very powerful. And that's that harmonious living that we're working towards, right? That this book is trying to point out to us. That's that's it. Living in harmony, everything around you. Remember the music chapter a second ago when I was saying that waves that are in harmony with each other amplify each other, right? They will be louder, they will be more powerful if they're in harmony. If they are not in harmony, if they're in disharmony, they will cancel each other out. Those frequencies will actually butt up against each other and they'll fight each other. And neither wave will propagate properly or loudly out into the ether. So, harmony, what we want. Disharmony, eh, Can't be avoided all the time, but can mitigate, right? We can do our best. Okay, moving on. Chapter 111, tradition. Tradition was once function, but today there is no tradition. Where is there a true path? In the past, people didn't question the teachings of Tao. There was a living tradition, and if one followed it, one could reasonably expect to walk a good path. But today, the traditional teachings of Tao have been dimmed by civil wars, political persecution, and the death of masters. Wealth and technology hold the attention of most people, and few have time for Tao. Adopting arcane methods will not lead to success. We must discover Tao for ourselves. Seeking it in the here and now means fulfilling the spirit of tradition instead of merely copying it. How can we ape the past? The old ways are gone. Tao means different things to different people in different times. Indeed, we might say that the Tao of today leads to unprecedented direction. We have to adapt, but being contemporary should not be an excuse for adulteration and shortcuts. Once we find the true path of today, we must walk it, the same determination as ancient. Mm, tradition. Man, what a debate or discussion. I apologize. We could get in while talking about tradition. What should we do with tradition? We continue tradition ever, even though they may not fit the modern world. To say, it's important to remember those traditions and why we have them, but it is also important to stay open for the world we live in. Can't simply ignore the changes that are happening and cling to these traditions forever. Because as we've learned, the yin yang rotate. Yin cannot always be on top of yang, yang not always on top of yin. Everything moves, everything is in cycle. And that's how we live our lives. That's how we should try to move with our culture. We should try to move with the reality of the political climate. If we ignore that, we are ignoring ourselves. We're trying to ignore the world and shut ourselves off, ourselves locked in this box forever and just pretend, you like a horse with blinders on. La 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 la. I don't see anything. Nothing is happening. Put my fingers in my ears and move on. That's not living in harmony with the Tao. Not living. It's not living with harmony around yourself. Is ignoring everything. And remember at the very beginning of the episode, I said that Tao means different things, right? You're going to read the same text that I will, and we'll come to two completely different conclusions. And it's supposed to be like that. The ancient masters will read the Tao and they came up with some explanations, and then we read the Tao and we come up with new explanations because we are different and we live in a different world. That's not to say, when we study Taoism, we shouldn't take it upon ourselves to try and roll that clock backwards 2,500 years and say, okay, well, we're all going to live like ancient Chinese people with emperors and we're all going to go to war all the time. Nope, that's don't do that. that's cultural appropriation. Please don't do that. Remember who you are. Remember that you are different, and that we are different. from when this originally was written. And so we are supposed to see it differently. It will affect you differently, right? You are not an ancient master thousands of years ago. You are you. And that is great. That is perfect. Um, it is open for interpretation on purpose. And that's great, right? That's happy. That's good. That is very, very good. We have to find it for ourselves, guys. I know this is like answering a question with more questions, and I kind of apologize about that. Um, but it has to be internally. It has to be your own path. There are very few things anyone can answer for you. It's something that takes practice and encouragement, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here to give you dedicated time, dedicated place, share my thoughts and feelings with you, and I hope that you're taking these and you can find your own thoughts and your own feelings and come to your own conclusions. So, are traditions important? Or, yeah, I think they are. I enjoy some traditions. I think it's great. I think it's great. I think it's powerful to feel connected to something or to people that have come and gone over the thousands of years. I think that's amazing to be a part of such an amazing tradition. But there are some traditions that need to go. There are some traditions that maybe they don't work anymore. It's time to let those go. And that's what we should do. That's what you should do. That's what I should do. I hope. I hope. All right. Moving on. Chapter 112. Non anticipation. Not just anticipation, but non anticipation. Put forth your effort with no thought of gain. One should not pray or meditate with any thought of gain. Hold no expectation. Then the reward will come. If one strives for power and gifts, no true results will come, and one will become lost in lust. Praying for results brings no result. The true spirit only appears when there are no expectations to hamper it. Books and teachings talk of the results of meditation because they prepare the aspirant for the experience that will occur. It is important not to look on these writings as advertisements. They are merely descriptions of what you will encounter. Sit down with no thoughts of results, and you will go naturally and spontaneously with Tao. It is admittedly a paradox. We are to know what to expect, and yet we should allow them to appear as they will. It seems irrational and inefficient. Yet, if you would know Tao, there is no faster way to enter the midstream. So again, we return to this paradoxical situation where no one can be told what Tao is, but yet we have all these books that seem to do and attempt just that. So how can that be possible? What is happening? Are we all hypocrites? Is it hypocrisy to literally the first chapter, the first sentence in the Tao Te Ching. I'm going to read it from you. This is a Stephen Mitchell translation. Is the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. That's how it starts. So basically, this entire religion, this entire philosophy begins by saying you don't know anything. And you can't. You basically can't know anything, and you never will. So let's get started. So yeah, in this chapter, When you meditate, when you have your daily practice, it is important to remember that my experience and the words I choose to describe what happened should not be your expectation. Your expectation should be non expectation. Your anticipation be non anticipation because it's different for everyone. I know we've discussed this a couple of times just this episode, but when you reach that place, it won't be you won't be able to describe it in the same way that I do. In fact, I was speaking to my teacher once, a man by the name of George Thompson. By the way, amazing YouTube channel. Should shout out to his channel and take a look. I was talking to him in a lesson once, and I was trying to describe what happens when I practice my breathing. There are a couple of breathing techniques I practice. The first one is a technique called 478, where you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, do that for 8 counts. Um, this is what I do for lowering anxiety, or if panic attack is setting in. I'm able to kind of instinctively reach out to that practice, and it helps. There's another Taoist breathing technique that's literally called true breathing, Taoist true breathing, where you slow your breath as slow as you can possibly get it. You breathe through your nose to the point where you can't even feel yourself breathing, and this dramatically lowers your heart rate and puts you in a mental place that is very hard to describe. Um, I I I can describe what happens when I get there, but if I describe it, or if you hear other people describe it, remember that words are not intrinsic to what is happening. To say that over and over again, my meditative state is not your meditative state because words do not mean anything. Words mean everything, and yet they mean nothing. Words are a way to describe something, but it's also a way to describe what something is not. So when you sit down to practice, you study, you read, remember, take everything with a grain of salt. That is to say, come to your own conclusion. Try different things. Breathe, find different breathing practices. Uh, and remember what I said earlier, meditation is not just sitting there and being still in a quiet room. Meditation can be going for a walk. Meditation can be listening to music, be reading a book. For me, one of my favorite meditation practices is doing the dishes. I discovered that when I do the dishes, everything else fades away in my mind. I'm only focused on doing the dishes. TV can be going, kids can be running around, playing games with each other. I'm only focused on that one thing. I used to live in this house. One of my favorite practices was sweeping the front porch, the large porch part of the house, and I would sweep it about once a week as it got dirty, and I thought it was fantastic. Helped me relax, stay calm. So yeah, what does meditation do? I don't know. I know what it is for me, but don't take my words for it. Anyone ever watch Reading Rainbow as a kid? It was a show on PBS here in America about learning, loving to read. You'd always say, "You don't have to take my words for it." Trying to get you to go out and read, right? Read your own books. See if you like them. Um, find your own meditative practice. See if you like it. If not, do a different one. Find something else. Don't trust some guy on the internet. Do it for yourself. And you may be surprised at what you'll find. Okay, we're going to go with one more We're on chapter 113. It's called Acceptance. Drought turns basins dust. Light rain is a dew of mockery. Receive without complaint. Work without faith. When the countryside is gripped in drought, it is useless to complain. Even when light rain fails to moisten the parched landscape, we should accept what happens. This is the way of Tao, and one who follows Tao accepts what comes. We may have ambitions to move in one direction, but Tao will decide otherwise. We may have plans for the future, but Tao will bend time differently. There are those who will cry out in anger and frustration. The follower of Tao remains silent and goes about the business of preparation. Acceptance does not mean fatalism. It does not mean capitulation to some slaughtering predestination. Those who follow Tao do not believe in being helpless. They believe in acting within the framework of circumstance. For example, in a drought, they will prepare by storing what water is available. That is sensible action. They will not plant a garden of flowers that requires a great deal of water. That is ignorance and egotism. Acceptance is a dynamic act. It should not signal inertness, stagnation, or inactivity. One should simply ascertain what the situation requires and then implement what one thinks is best. As long as one's deeds are in accord with the time and one leaves no sloppy traces, then the action is correct. Oh boy, what a chapter to end on, guys. Okay, accepting. It has been described that Taoism is a pacifist lifestyle. Right? To be a Taoist means you accept what comes and everything is Tao. Nothing is not Tao. So I'm just going to allow everything to happen. Nobody has goals, right? Nobody should ever worry or that you're just going to find this very zen place and just let everything happen. Okay, that is not proper acceptance. That is not the acceptance that we are talking about in Taoism. We are talking about being okay with what comes your way. That is not to say that we can't make goals or have desires. As we've learned earlier in previous chapters, desiring is a human emotion. It is part of what our evolution has taught us to do. We can be happy and have needs and wants, but we do not allow those needs and wants to run amok and control everything we do. So that when something happens that is outside of our wants, desires, or needs, it doesn't completely wreck us. Those people who they have to be in control of everything all the time, and like that one little thing doesn't work out and it just wrecks them for a couple of days or a week, and they get really depressed and sad. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, it's one thing to say I would like to have a better job 5 years from now, right? That's a good goal. That's a goal you can work toward. But if that goal doesn't pan out, don't let that cause you completely destroy yourself. You are not a terrible person because you didn't achieve your goal. Or maybe somebody else achieved that goal and you didn't. You shouldn't allow that anger or disappointment wreck everything around you. That's not acceptance. So, accepting and being okay with the way the world moves around you is not the same thing as just letting it steamroll you every single time something doesn't turn out exactly the way you want. In this chapter, you can notice here at the Kindle version, the very end, anything that's underlined is a popular section, right? It's the highlighted section of other readers. So the highlighted section here says acceptance is a dynamic act. Dynamic, okay? That means different, changing. It's a living, kind of breathing occurrence. It's not just accepting everything at once all the time, and it's not denying everything either. It's both simultaneously. It should not signal inertness, stagnation, or inactivity, right? It doesn't mean you just sit there. Acceptance is not doing nothing. As long as one's deeds are in accord with time and one leaves no sloppy traces, then the action is correct. So when you decide to act, right, you shouldn't do those same unharmonious things against everybody else. I shouldn't take this statue, this jade dragon, and smack someone upside the head because I didn't get what I want. I shouldn't yell and scream at somebody because the dinner was uncooked or poorly cooked. I'm at a restaurant and the food doesn't come out exactly the way I want it. I shouldn't rail against that poor server and maybe not tip them because they just made a mistake or the cook made a mistake. It's okay, right? Accept that things will not go the way you desire every single time, right? And allow yourself to move with that flow of energy. Think of it like the palm tree, okay? Ever seen a video of a hurricane mashing up against the shore? And you see all these trees are blown over, right? Uh, oak trees and maybe maple trees or whatever kind of tree is over there. But you know what kind of tree doesn't get blown over? Palm tree. You know why the palm tree doesn't get blown over? Because it bends. It bends the flow of the wind and rain. In fact, some of them bend almost all the way until they touch the ground. So, how is that possible? What is happening? That's how we should live our lives, right? Those who bend and are flexible will be more harmonious with those around you, will lead a happier, more joyful lifestyle. Um, in fact, just last spring, there was a huge storm that blew through my neighborhood, and a couple of the bigger trees blew over, snapped completely in half. But the smaller trees that were more pliable, that were more bendy, younger, those survived perfectly fine. And yes, there is an example in there about age, stiffness. I get that, and that's a story for another time. Um, just know I recognize that. We'll talk about that someday. Um, but yes, back to actions. Your actions be soft and flowing, and they should be able to bend as the situation calls for it. Doesn't mean you don't do actions. Just means you do them in a in a uh not sloppy way, as this chapter would would say. The examples that are used in this book sometimes. Well, okay, guys. Next week we're gonna pick up chapter 114, Faith, but we'll stop there. I want to thank you guys for coming out and listening to the show. If you like what I do, if you like these episodes, I hope you will go to projectjade.net and give those articles a read. Go to the Taoist Online and give those articles a read. And if you really, really enjoy, I would hope that you like and subscribe. Yes, I said it. Fine, I have to say it. or leave a comment. I know, everybody says it, and I cringe every time I have to say it, but there it is. Or you know what? This shirt I'm wearing is a part of our merch store. You can find that merch store, projectjade.net. We have a bunch of stuff there, and all the proceeds go back to the writers, paying them for their very hard work. And I hope you will help me support them because those writers deserve every single penny that we can give them. Thank you so much. I will see you guys next Sunday at 9 a.m. live here on YouTube, or listen to the show later on all your favorite podcast networks. So long. See you next time.